Imagine walking alone through a silent battlefield at night. The fog is thick, the moonlight dim. The only sound is the crunch of dry grass beneath your feet. But then you hear it, a low, rhythmic gacha sound. It's not the wind. It's the sound of thousands of tiny bones clicking together. And then, a massive hand, pale as winter, smashes through the mist, followed by a skull the size of a house. You cannot run. You cannot hide. This is not a hallucination. This is the end. You have just met the Gashadokuro, the starving giant of Japanese folklore. And it has been waiting for you. Welcome back to Mythos Atlas. Today, we are opening one of the darkest chapters of Japanese legend to look at a creature that is as terrifying as it is tragic. The Gashadokuro. In English, this name translates literally to starving skeleton. But it is so much more than that. It is a yokai, a class of supernatural beings that range from the mischievous to the murderous. But the Gashadokuro does not just haunt a single house or river. It is a manifestation of collective agony, a giant that roams the countryside, fueled by the unsatisfied souls of the dead. It is a creature born from our own failures, from war, famine, and the cold indifference of the world. To truly understand this behemoth, we cannot simply look at its skeletal form. We must first descend into the mud and blood of Japan's ancient history, to a time when death was not an abstract concept, but a daily reality. This is the cradle of the Gashadokuro. In the ancient texts, this creature is rarely mentioned directly. It is a phantom, a whisper in the shadow of historical records. Its modern popularity comes from later artistic interpretations, especially the woodblock prints of the Edo period. But its roots are buried in the real bones of the Heian period. This era, while known for its artistic and cultural peaks, was also marked by brutal, devastating warfare. Wars like the Genpei War 1180 to 1185 turned entire provinces into graveyards. Imagine a battlefield in 12th century Japan after a major clash. Thousands of samurai, conscripted peasants, and civilians lie where they fell. The soil is soaked in crimson. But the real horror begins after the battle. Ancient Japan was a deeply spiritual society. Every soul required proper funeral rites to pass peacefully into the afterlife. These rites were sacred. They required purification, offerings, and the guidance of monks. But who had time for rituals on a chaotic battlefield? The dead were left. They were abandoned to the elements. They lay in the rain, the sun, and the snow. Their bodies were picked clean by wolves and crows. This was not just a tragedy. It was a cosmic injustice. To die a violent death was already a great spiritual burden. But to be denied proper burial was an unforgivable insult. The souls of these abandoned soldiers could not cross the Sanzu River, the Japanese version of the river Styx. They became Yurei ghosts, specifically Onryo, vengeful spirits. These spirits are defined not by sorrow, but by gaba, an intense, burning hatred that transcends death. In the standard legends, a single Onryo might haunt a single enemy or a family. But on these battlefields, there were thousands of them. Their collective hatred was a force of nature. They were trapped, starving for peace, starving for food, starving for recognition. But there was no one to hear them. So, their spirits remained tied to their own unburied, rotting bones. And then the impossible happened. As the decades passed and the bones turned to dust, their collective anger did not fade. Instead, it coalesced. A single bone by itself has no power. But a battlefield of 10,000 unburied warriors contains an incredible reservoir of raw, resentful energy. The legends say that in the deepest parts of the night, when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thinnest, these thousands of disparate souls began to find each other. Their shared agony created a magnetic force. The spirits began to piece together a body from the countless fragments of their own forgotten skeletons. Like cells forming an organism, the skulls, ribs, femurs, and vertebrae knit themselves together into a new, terrifying whole. This was the moment the Onryo ceased to be thousands of individuals and became one singular entity. They had created a god of starvation and hatred, They created a creature that stood not 6 feet tall, but perhaps 40 or 50 feet high. A being made entirely of pale, clicking bones, but animated by a spiritual fire. Its eyes were not eyes at all, but two deep, swirling voids of blue-white onibi, spirit fire. Its face was a frozen mask of a human skull, its jaw perpetually slightly ajar, as if it were about to speak or, perhaps, to take its next bite. This was a physical body built to manifest a purely spiritual need. These souls were starving. They had been starving for centuries, and now they finally had the means to satisfy that hunger. When the Gashadokuro is fully formed, it is driven by a singular primal instinct. Hunger. But it does not hunt like an animal. It does not chase prey. It roams. It is a creature of silence, moving with an eerie, clicking grace that is completely incongruent with its massive size. Its favorite hunting grounds are places that mirror its own origin. Lonely roads at night, deep forests where people go missing, or, of course, the ancient battlefields where its bones first found each other. To see a Gashadokuro is nearly impossible until it is too late. The primary warning sign is not a sight, but a sound. As it walks, the thousands of individual joints that make up its body click and clack against each other. This is the gacha gacha sound that chills the blood. If you hear this sound on a silent night, it means you have entered its territory. The yokai is near, but even then you might not see it. It can move with invisible stealth, especially when shrouded in a fog of its own making. Its standard method of attack is brutal, simple, and utterly bone-chilling. A solitary traveler, already nervous from the sounds and the silence, will suddenly feel a massive presence behind them. There is no roar, no scream, just the realization that the moonlight has been blocked. Before they can even turn their head, a hand the size of a wagon comes down from above, gripping their head with unbreakable strength. The Gashadokuro doesn't bite. It doesn't crush you. Its preferred method is much more specific. It lifts the traveler up directly to its massive, silent jaw. And there, it does the one thing a starving soul must do. It bites down. It doesn't eat the whole person. No, it specifically bites off the head of its victim. The reasons given for this in the legends are as disturbing as the act itself. Some say it is simple pragmatism. The brain is the seat of consciousness, and the Gashadokuro, made of thousands of disparate memories, seeks to consume the pure, singular memory of its victim to add focus to its own fractured existence. Others say it is an act of sheer contempt. It denies its victim their own identity, reducing them to a faceless, headless corpse, just as the Gashadokuro's own souls were reduced to forgotten, anonymous bones on a battlefield. And the third, and perhaps most terrifying theory, is that it is trying to drink their blood. The souls are not just hungry, they are eternally thirsty. They have lain in the dry earth for centuries. When it bites off the head, it does so to drink the final, sacred blood of the victim, attempting to satisfy a thirst that can never be quenched. After the bite, the Gashadokuro drops the headless corpse and moves on, its hunger momentarily stilled, but never truly gone. This creature, born from war, is also deeply tied to the second great scourge of human history, famine. If warfare creates battlefields of unburied dead, famine creates entire villages of them. History is filled with accounts of devastating famines that obliterated whole populations. In these periods, parents were forced to watch their children die of starvation. Families withered away in their own homes. And again, the central tragedy occurs. There is no one left to bury the dead. The entire village becomes a mass grave above the ground. These souls, too, die the most ignoble, painful death possible, dying from the very force, hunger, that defines the creature they will become. Their spirits are not angry at an enemy on a battlefield. They are angry at life itself, at the very earth that refused to feed them. This different kind of hatred, a pure, cold resentment for existence, is another crucial component of the Gashadokuro. It is a creature made of the collective Eno, spoken by the dead to the universe. When these souls find each other, they don't just form a monster. They create an impossible, paradoxical entity, a physical monster made of purely spectral energy. It is a ghost you can touch, and one that can rip your head off. So we have this colossal beast, this god of forgotten dead, made of thousands of bones and animated by collective hatred. It is a formidable concept, but it is also one that has captivated the Japanese imagination for centuries. It represents more than just a horror story. It is a profound cultural statement. The Gashadokuro is a physical manifestation of the concept of kegar, ritual impurity or spiritual pollution. The dead, when left unburied and unhonored, create kegar, poisons the land, the air, and the water. The Gashadokuro is the ultimate form of kegar. It is kegar made massive, given form, and granted a terrifying will. It is the land's revenge on the living for forgetting the dead. It is an argument against indifference. To forget the dead is to invite their collective wrath. And the Gashadokuro is that wrath personified. But how does one stop a mountain of bone that is already dead? This is the chilling reality of the Gashadokuro. You cannot kill what has no life to take. In most traditional encounters, there is no epic battle, no legendary sword that can shatter its ribs, and no spell that can banish 10,000 souls at once. If you see the glint of its spirit fire eyes through the mist, you are already within its reach. The only true defense is prevention, the performance of sacred rites to appease the souls before they ever coalesce. But once the gacha-gacha sound begins, your only hope is the sunrise. Like many creatures of the night, the Gashadokuro is bound by the laws of the sun. As the first rays of dawn pierce the horizon, the spiritual energy holding the skeletons together weakens. The collective will fractures, and the giant collapses, dissolving back into a pile of anonymous, weathered bones scattered across the field, waiting for the next moonless night to rise again. However, there is one famous story in Japanese history that gives us a glimpse of a Gashadokuro being summoned and controlled, the legend of Princess Takiyasha. This story takes us to the 10th century, centering on the rebellion of her father, the warlord Tara no Masakato. Masakato attempted to create an independent kingdom in the Kanto region, challenging the central authority of the emperor in Kyoto. His rebellion was crushed, and he was eventually beheaded. But the story didn't end with his death. His daughter, Princess Takiyasha, was said to be a powerful sorceress. Devastated by the destruction of her clan and the death of her father, she retreated to the ruins of her family's palace at Soma. Legend says she spent her nights performing dark rituals, calling upon the spirits of the soldiers who died for her father's cause. In a famous woodblock print by the legendary artist Utagawa Kuniyashi, we see the climax of this tale. As the emperor's warrior, Mitsukuni, comes to confront her, Takiyasha unrolls a giant scroll and summons a Gashadokuro. In the artwork, the skeleton is so massive it rips through the very palace walls, its skeletal fingers reaching for the warrior. This version of the myth adds a layer of human intent to the monster. Here, the Gashadokuro is not just a wandering force of nature. It is a weapon of vengeance, a manifestation of a daughter's grief and a fallen clan's fury. It shows that the starving souls can be directed by those who know how to speak the language of the dead. But if we step away from the ancient scrolls and look at the Gashadokuro through a modern lens, we find that its hunger has not faded. In fact, it has evolved. Today, the Gashadokuro is a staple of Japanese pop culture, appearing in everything from Hellboy comics and Studio Ghibli films to video games like Nioh and Dark Souls. Why does a 1,000-year-old skeleton still resonate with us so deeply today? Perhaps it's because the Gashadokuro represents a fear that is universal and timeless. The fear of being forgotten. In a world that moves faster every day, where information is discarded as quickly as it is consumed, the idea of the anonymous dead is more relevant than ever. The Gashadokuro is a reminder that every life has a story, and every death deserves dignity. When we ignore the tragedies of the past, they don't simply disappear. They accumulate. They grow in the shadows of our subconscious until they become too large to ignore. There is also a profound environmental subtext to the Gashadokuro. In Shinto belief, the land itself is sacred, and blood spilled in anger pollutes that sanctity. The Gashadokuro is the personification of a sick landscape. It is what happens when the earth is treated as a dumpster for our wars and our waste. It is the literal bones of the earth rising up to demand an accounting. When you hear the clicking of its teeth, you aren't just hearing a monster. You are hearing the protest of the neglected world. Think about the sheer scale of the creature once more. 40 feet of bone. A mind made of 10,000 voices, all screaming for the same thing. To be seen, to be fed, to be at peace. It is the ultimate, unfinished business. If you were to stand before it, you wouldn't just feel fear. You would feel the weight of history. You would feel the cold wind of every battlefield and the hollow ache of every famine. The Gashadokuro is a mirror. It shows us the cost of our indifference. It asks us, what have you left behind? Who have you forgotten in your climb to the top? As we close this chapter of the Mythos Atlas, take a moment to consider the silence of the night. In Japan, even today, there are those who leave small offerings of rice or sake at roadside shrines. Not just for the gods, but for the Muinbotok, the dead who have no one to look after them. It is a small gesture, a tiny ritual of remembrance. But perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, it is the only thing that keeps the giants at bay. Because as long as we remember, as long as we offer a name to the nameless, the souls have no reason to gather. They have no reason to starve. But if the rituals stop, if the shrines crumble and the stories are lost to time, the gacha-gacha sound will return. The fog will thicken over the old fields, and the starving skeleton will begin its slow, clicking walk once more, looking for a head to bite and a soul to join its ranks. The Gashadokuro is more than a myth. It is a warning. Treat the dead with respect, for their bones are the foundation of your world. And if those foundations start to move, there is nowhere left to run. Thank you for journeying with us through the shadows of Japan. If you felt the chill of the Gashadokuro's breath, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to unlock the next map in our atlas. We are traveling to every corner of the globe to find the legends that define us.